a McDonald's parking lot in Maryland, an NSA spy with America's most devastating secrets, and a plan to sell them to Iraq for $13 million. Brian Patrick Regan knew everything. He could see enemy missiles from space, track submarines beneath Arctic ice, read license plates in Baghdad from satellites orbiting Earth. For 14 years, he held the keys to America's entire surveillance system, secrets worth billions, operations that kept the nation safe. But he owed $120,000 in credit card debt. His electricity kept getting shut off. His son needed braces. So this master sergeant with top-secret clearance made a choice that would haunt American intelligence forever. He stole 20,000 pages of classified documents, created unbreakable codes using ancient runes and Tolkien's Elvish, left packages at McDonald's across Maryland, wrapped in plastic, hidden near dumpsters where families ate happy meals. What the FBI found in those packages, satellite vulnerabilities, missile coordinates, the blueprints to blind America, could have changed the course of history. But here's what no one expected. His letters to Iraq, Libya, and China never reached enemy hands, because someone was already watching, and the trap they set for him would expose something even more terrifying than treason itself. The most damaging spy in U.S. history was caught buying a Happy Meal. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always amazed by our global community of history lovers. And if you're fascinated by the hidden truths of the Cold War era, subscribe now, because the stories we uncover here aren't in any textbook. Now, let's return to that morning in August 2001, when everything Brian Regan believed about secrets, power, and loyalty was about to shatter forever. The morning of August 23, 2001, began like thousands of others at Dulles International Airport. Business travelers checked their watches. Families corralled children. Security guards sipped coffee and scanned the early crowd. No one paid attention to the middle-aged man in the rumpled polo shirt standing at gate D26, clutching a carry-on bag like it contained his entire life. In a way it did. Brian Patrick Regan had 20 minutes before boarding his flight to Zurich, 20 minutes before freedom, 20 minutes before $13 million would transform him from a broke intelligence analyst into a wealthy exile. He'd rehearsed this moment for months, the walk to the gate, the casual demeanor, the forgettable face in the crowd. What he hadn't rehearsed was the weight of what he carried, not in his bag but in his mind. The complete architecture of American surveillance, memorized down to the last frequency. To understand how a decorated Air Force master sergeant ended up selling his country's secrets for money he'd never receive, you have to understand the peculiar burden of working inside America's intelligence apparatus. Every morning, for 14 years, Regan had driven through 3 separate checkpoints to reach his workplace at the National Reconnaissance Office in Chantilly, Virginia. Each checkpoint meant another layer of secrecy, another wall between his life and the rest of the world. Inside those walls, Regan lived in a different universe. While his neighbors worried about mortgage payments and soccer practice, he studied satellite imagery of North Korean nuclear facilities. While his brother-in-law sold insurance in Ohio, he tracked Chinese submarine movements through classified underwater sensor networks. He knew which world leaders were dying before their own doctors did. He could predict conflicts months before they erupted. He held knowledge that presidents begged for in briefings. But knowledge, as Regan discovered, doesn't pay the bills. By 1999, the mathematics of his life had become a cruel joke. His annual salary of $60,000 made him comfortable by most American standards, but not by his. His wife had expensive tastes developed during better times. The leather furniture bought on credit, the vacations charged to cards with mounting interest, the private school tuition they couldn't really afford but couldn't bear to sacrifice. Every month, the bills exceeded his paycheck. Every month, the hole got deeper. The credit card statements told the story of a slow-motion catastrophe. First Visa, maxed at $20,000. Then MasterCard, another $15,000. Discover, American Express, department store cards, each one a temporary solution that became a permanent problem. The minimum payments alone consumed half his salary. Collection agencies called during dinner. His teenage daughter stopped inviting friends over, embarrassed by the notices taped to their door. Regan tried everything legal first. Overtime was impossible. Intelligence work didn't pay extra for staying late to analyze satellite feeds. A second job was forbidden. Security clearance rules prohibited outside employment that might create conflicts of interest or vulnerabilities to foreign influence. He applied for hardship loans from the Air Force Aid Society, but was told his salary was too high to qualify. The irony burned. Too rich for help, too poor to survive. It was during one particularly humiliating evening, his wife crying over a shut-off notice while his children did homework by candlelight, that Regan first allowed himself the thought that would destroy everything. He knew things worth millions, specific things. Coordinates of spy satellites that cost $2 billion each to deploy. Communication intercept methods that had taken decades to develop. The exact blind spots in America's surveillance coverage, where enemy operations could move undetected. Foreign governments would pay fortunes for such information. China, desperate to counter American satellite surveillance. Libya, eager to hide their chemical weapons programs. Iraq, still reeling from Desert Storm, hungry to understand how America had tracked their every move. Any one of them would pay millions for what Regan carried in his head every day. The transformation from thought to action happened gradually, then suddenly. First, he simply browsed files he shouldn't. Curious, he told himself, about systems beyond his direct responsibilities. The NSA's computer networks were vast, interconnected, and surprisingly trusting of those already inside. A signals analyst with top-secret clearance could access far more than their specific job required. The system assumed that anyone who'd passed the background checks, polygraphs, and psychological evaluations would never betray that trust. Regan learned to move through these digital vaults like a ghost. He memorized the patterns of system administrators, knew when automated audits ran, understood which queries triggered alerts, and which passed unnoticed. He discovered that printing classified documents was barely monitored if done from certain terminals during shift changes. He found that the burn bags, meant for destroying sensitive papers, were only inspected if they exceeded a certain weight. By spring of 2000, he'd crossed the line from browsing to stealing. The first document he printed and smuggled out was almost an accident. A report on Iraqi air defenses he'd meant to read at his desk but tucked into his briefcase when called to a meeting. He spent that entire night at home staring at it, this piece of paper that could end his life as he knew it. The next morning, he brought it back, slipped it into the burn bag, and promised himself never again. But promises made in comfort shatter under pressure. When his son needed dental surgery and insurance wouldn't cover it, Regan printed 50 pages on Chinese satellite detection capabilities. When his mortgage went into default, he downloaded files on submarine tracking stations in the Pacific. Each theft felt like solving an immediate crisis while creating a future catastrophe. But the future seemed abstract compared to the collection agent on the phone, the eviction notice on the door, the shame in his children's eyes. The question that haunted him wasn't whether to sell the secrets. That decision felt inevitable by summer of 2000. But how? This wasn't the Cold War anymore, when Soviet agents prowled Washington's cocktail parties. He couldn't walk into an embassy without being photographed by his own colleagues' surveillance systems. He couldn't make contact through normal channels that the NSA itself monitored. So Brian Regan, master of America's most sophisticated intelligence systems, turned to the oldest methods in espionage history. Dead drops, public places, handwritten letters, invisible ink made from lemon juice, like something from a children's spy novel. While his colleagues tracked terrorists through cell phone metadata and satellite imagery, he studied park maps and practiced drawing Celtic runes, building an analog bridge to buyers in a digital age. The absurdity wasn't lost on him. Here was a man who could task satellites to photograph any location on Earth, reduced to sketching maps of McDonald's parking lots. The first dead drop was a disaster. In February 2001, Regan drove to Patapsco Valley State Park with a package wrapped in 3 layers of plastic: satellite photos of Iraqi military installations, documents showing how America tracked Saddam's communications, all real intelligence to prove his access. He'd chosen a hollow tree 50 yards from the parking area, marked it with GPS coordinates accurate to 3 feet. Professional tradecraft, he thought. But when he reached the spot, families were everywhere. A birthday party had claimed the picnic area. Children played hide-and-seek around his chosen tree. He sat in his car for 3 hours, package burning like uranium in his trunk, watching 7-year-olds run past his drop site. Finally, as dusk fell and the families left, he made the drop. His hands shook so badly he could barely drive home. That night he created his first code. If foreign agents wanted his intelligence, they'd need to prove it with a signal. An orange X spray-painted on a specific highway overpass. He'd check it every morning on his commute to Fort Meade. For 6 weeks, he drove under that bridge, heart pounding, looking for paint that never appeared. What Regan didn't know, couldn't know, was that his carefully crafted letter to Iraqi intelligence had been intercepted before leaving American soil. The NSA itself, in one of history's great ironies, operated mail coverage on certain diplomatic pouches. His offer to commit treason had traveled from his mailbox to a sterile room in Fort Meade, where analysts photographed every page before resealing the envelope. They never forwarded it. Instead, they opened a file labeled Paladin and began the hunt for a mole whose identity they didn't yet know. Stephen Carr, the FBI special agent assigned to Paladin, studied those first letters like scripture. The handwriting was distinctive, precise, almost architectural. The language was professional but with quirks. Middle Eastern countries referred to as your nation. American intelligence described in technical terms only an insider would know. Whoever wrote these letters didn't just have access to classified information. They understood its context, its value, its operational significance. Meanwhile, Regan refined his approach. McDonald's became his answer to the tradecraft problem. These restaurants were everywhere, identical, busy enough to provide cover. Who would notice one more customer using the restroom, throwing something in the dumpster, sitting in the parking lot checking his phone? He mapped 17 locations across Maryland and Virginia, each coded with playing cards. The McDonald's in Bowie became the king of hearts. Laurel was the queen of diamonds. Each location had multiple drop points, behind dumpsters, beneath playground equipment, inside hollow fence posts. His encryption system evolved into something beautiful and bizarre. Base 26 substitution ciphers using Tolkien's Tengwar script. Steganography hiding, messages inside grocery lists, coordinate systems based on his children's birthdays converted through astronomical calculations. He created a personal cryptographic language that he believed was unbreakable, each document's location protected by layers of codes that existed only in his mind. The FBI watched him develop this system through surveillances he never detected, cameras in his office ceiling, keystroke loggers on his classified terminals, agents in adjacent parking spaces at McDonald's, filming him through tinted windows as he placed packages with the casual precision of someone throwing away trash. They could have arrested him immediately, but Carr wanted more, wanted to understand the full scope of the breach, locate all the hidden materials, identify any co-conspirators. So they let him run, documenting each crime while ensuring no intelligence reached enemy hands. Every package Regan left was retrieved within minutes, photographed, analyzed, then replaced exactly as found. Foreign intelligence services never knew they had an American volunteer desperate to betray his country for money. By July 2001, Regan had hidden over 10,000 documents across 4 states. His memory palace contained thousands more details: satellite frequencies, orbital patterns, the exact timing of reconnaissance passes over hostile territory. He'd become a human hard drive of America's most sensitive secrets, each fact indexed and cross-referenced in his mind through mnemonic techniques he'd spent months perfecting. The stress manifested in ways his family noticed but misunderstood. He'd lost 30 pounds. His wife thought it was the financial pressure. He'd developed insomnia. She assumed it was worry about bankruptcy. He'd started taking long, solitary drives. She suspected an affair. In a way, she was right. He was having an affair with treason, each dead drop a secret rendezvous, each coded message a love letter to enemies who didn't even know his name. His children, teenagers now, watched their father disappear even when he was present. At dinner, he'd stare into space, mentally reviewing drop locations. During their soccer games, he'd sketch encryption keys in notebooks he immediately burned. They thought he was losing his mind to debt. They didn't know he was losing his soul to something worse. The beginning of the end came with a simple decision: retirement. If he stayed in the intelligence community, the next polygraph would destroy him. But if he retired, moved to a country without extradition, contacted foreign buyers from safety, then his knowledge became his pension. His memory palace became his Swiss bank account. He submitted his papers in July, setting his retirement date for August 24th. 1 month to finish his collection. 1 month to memorize the last crucial details. 1 month before he'd board a plane and never return. Stephen Carr had been hunting spies for 15 years, but Brian Regan presented a unique challenge. Most moles were motivated by ideology or compromise, blackmail, revenge, political belief. Regan appeared driven by pure economics, treating American secrets like commodities in a marketplace that existed only in his imagination. He was simultaneously the most dangerous and pathetic traitor Carr had ever pursued. The FBI surveillance team assigned to Regan called him the librarian for his methodical habits. Every morning, he drove the same route to work, stopping at the same gas station, buying the same black coffee. Every evening, he returned home by 7:15, ate dinner in silence, then retreated to his basement office where he'd work until 2 or 3 in the morning. They knew he was encoding something down there. The infrared cameras showed him hunched over papers, writing in patterns that looked almost artistic through the thermal imaging. What they didn't know was the scale of his memorization project. In that basement, Regan was transferring the entire architecture of American intelligence from paper to memory, using the method of loci, an ancient Greek technique where information is stored in imaginary locations. He built mental palaces of extraordinary complexity. The first floor contained satellite specifications. The second held communication frequencies. The basement stored agent protocols. Each room, each wall, each piece of furniture anchored a classified secret. He tested himself obsessively. Could he recall the orbital period of USA 144? 23 hours, 56 minutes, 4 seconds. The frequency range for submarine emergency beacons? 8.364 to 8.984 megahertz. The blind spots in satellite coverage over Tehran? 14 minutes every third orbit, coordinates memorized to 6 decimal places. His mind became a classified library that required no security clearance to access. The FBI's behavioral analysts were fascinated and horrified. Here was someone who'd weaponized human memory itself, turning his brain into a storage device no search warrant could access, no surveillance could monitor. If he escaped the country, he'd carry enough intelligence to compromise American operations for decades, all locked in his head, protected by codes only he understood. August arrived with crushing heat and mounting tension. Reagan's retirement ceremony was scheduled for August 20th, a small affair in a conference room at Fort Meade, cake, and awkward speeches from colleagues who sensed something wrong but couldn't name it. He stood there, accepting handshakes and thanks for his service while knowing that FBI agents were probably watching from the parking lot, that his every word was being recorded, that this room full of people who'd trusted him for 14 years were shaking hands with a traitor. His supervisor, Colonel Marcus Webb, pulled him aside after the ceremony. "Brian, you all right? You seem different lately." "Just ready for a change," Regan replied, the understatement so massive it nearly choked him. Florida will be good for you, Webb continued. That job with Lockheed sounds perfect. There was no job with Lockheed. There was no future in Florida. There was only a one-way ticket to Zurich, 20,000 stolen documents, and a plan so desperate that even Reagan himself couldn't fully believe he'd execute it. 3 days before his flight, Reagan made his final drops. The FBI watched him visit 7 McDonald's locations in a single evening, leaving packages with the efficiency of someone who'd rehearsed every movement. At the Bowie location, his favorite, his King of Hearts, he sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes after making the drop, staring at the playground where children climbed and laughed. Agent Carr, watching from 3 cars away, wondered what went through a man's mind in such moments. Did he think about his own children, who'd soon learn their father was a traitor? Did he consider how those playground children might die if America's enemies learned to defeat our satellite surveillance? Or did he just see dollar signs, each secret traded for debt relief? The truth, recorded in Regan's journal found later, was simpler and sadder. I watch these families and wonder what it's like to not carry secrets, to eat a meal without calculating its cost against classified information, to love your country without knowing exactly how it watches you, to be free. The night before his flight, Regan couldn't sleep. He walked through his house like a ghost, memorizing different things now. His daughter's graduation photo, his son's baseball trophies, his wedding album from better times. He understood with sudden, crushing clarity that he was saying goodbye to more than a place. He was abandoning the possibility of ever being the person his family thought he was. At 4 in the morning on August 23rd, he wrote the letter to his children. Not a confession. He couldn't bear that. Just a father's inadequate goodbye. Be good, study hard, take care of your mother. He left it on the kitchen table, then thought better of it. Too obvious, too final. He'd mail it from Zurich instead when he was safe. He drove to Dulles in darkness, his encrypted disks hidden in hollowed-out books, his mind cycling through escape protocols, Swiss bank codes, and the new identity he'd assume. Behind him, a constellation of FBI vehicles followed at distances carefully calculated to remain invisible. The trap wasn't just set. It had been sprung months ago. He just didn't know it yet. Gate D26 at Dulles International Airport had seen 10,000 departures, but never one like this. Brian Regan stood in the boarding line at 6:10 a.m., carry-on bag in hand, watching passengers shuffle forward with their coffee and newspapers. Flight 992 to Zurich would begin boarding in 5 minutes. His new life would begin in 9 hours. The FBI agents positioned throughout the terminal had other plans. Stephen Carr watched from the food court, clear sight lines to the gate. 12 agents were in position, 2 at security, 3 scattered among passengers, others at strategic exits. They'd rehearsed this arrest 17 times in an empty hangar, calculating angles, minimizing risk to civilians. The plan was surgical. Wait until Regan handed over his boarding pass, then move. Maximum psychological impact. 0 chance of escape. No opportunity to destroy evidence. But Regan did something unexpected. Just before reaching the gate agent, he stepped out of line, walked to the window, stood there staring at planes on the tarmac, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. For 30 seconds, he didn't move. Carr's earpiece crackled. Subject stationary. Do we move? Hold, Carr whispered. He knew that look. The moment when reality finally lands, when the weight of what you're about to do becomes unbearable. He'd seen it in a dozen cases before. Sometimes they ran. Sometimes they confessed. Sometimes they got back in line and sealed their fate. Regan got back in line. At 6:15 a.m., he handed his boarding pass to the gate agent. She smiled, scanned it, began to hand it back. That's when Carr gave the signal. Brian Patrick Regan. The voice came from behind, calm and professional. Regan turned slowly as if he'd been expecting this moment his entire life. Special Agent David Morrison stood there with his badge out, flanked by 2 others. The gate agent's smile froze. Passengers backed away instinctively. FBI, you are under arrest for violation of the Espionage Act. The handcuffs clicked with a sound that echoed through the sudden silence. No struggle, no protest, no surprise. Regan simply nodded, as if acknowledging a chess move he'd seen coming but couldn't prevent. As they led him away, he passed a McDonald's Express. The golden arches blurred through tears he didn't realize were falling. The interrogation room at the Washington field office was deliberately ordinary. Beige walls, metal table, uncomfortable chairs. They wanted Regan to feel the banality of his new reality, the smallness of what his life had become. For the first 4 hours, he said nothing except lawyer. They showed him surveillance photos, him at drop sites, at his computer, in his basement. Still nothing. Then Carr played his ace. Not evidence of treason, but something else. Audio from a wiretap. Regan's daughter crying about being bullied at school for her family's poverty. His son asking why Dad was never home anymore. His wife whispering to her sister that she thought Brian was having an affair. Your family doesn't know yet, Carr said quietly. Right now, you're just detained. Could be a misunderstanding. Could be cleared up. But in about 6 hours, if you don't help us, this goes public. Every newspaper, every neighbor, everyone your kids go to school with will know their father is a spy. Regan broke. Not completely. He still harbored fantasies of bargaining. But enough. He admitted to taking documents, to the dead drops, to attempting contact with foreign governments. But he insisted desperately that nothing had reached enemy hands. You don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. I never met anyone. I never got paid. It was all just preparation. Preparation for what? Carr asked. For a life where my knowledge meant something, where what I knew had value, where I wasn't just another broke government employee with a security clearance. The scope of what Regan had stolen emerged slowly, like a submarine surfacing. First, he admitted to a few hundred documents. Then thousands. Then he revealed the buried packages, the GPS coordinates, the mental palace of memorized secrets. Each confession was extracted through a careful dance, FBI agents pretending to know less than they did, Regan revealing more than he intended. The most chilling moment came when they asked about his encryption system. Regan actually smiled, the first genuine expression he'd shown since arrest. You'll never break it, he said with quiet pride. It's based on personal memories you can't access. My father's death date, the song playing when I proposed to my wife, my daughter's first word. Each one transforms through algorithms I created, then combines with astronomical data from specific dates. Even with supercomputers, you're looking at billions of years to crack it. The NSA's best cryptographers would prove him wrong. It took them 3 weeks. But in that moment, Regan believed his codes were his masterpiece, the one thing he'd created that had genuine value. September 11th changed everything. The attacks happened while Regan was in federal custody, watching on a small television as the towers fell. The implications of his treason suddenly magnified exponentially. What if terrorists had received his satellite intelligence? What if they knew America's surveillance blind spots? The theoretical became horrifyingly real. The trial of United States versus Brian Patrick Regan opened on February 3, 2003 in the Eastern District of Virginia, the same courthouse that had tried Robert Hansen and Aldrich Ames. The prosecution table was covered with evidence bags containing 20,000 pages of stolen secrets. The defense table had a single legal pad and a man who'd run out of excuses. Prosecutor Patricia Hoffman opened with devastating simplicity. The defendant held in his hands the power to blind America, for money he would never receive. From enemies who never knew his name, he tried to sell our nation's eyes and ears. Only the vigilance of the FBI prevented a catastrophe that would have cost American lives. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage showed Regan at 17 different drop sites. Recovered documents included satellite vulnerabilities that cost billions to develop. His own handwritten letters to hostile governments removed any possibility of claiming innocence. The FBI had built a case so airtight that Reagan's lawyer, public defender Nina Ginsburg, privately told him to prepare for life in prison. But Reagan insisted on testifying. Against all legal advice, he took the stand on February 18th. For 6 hours, he tried to explain the unexplainable. "I'm not a traitor," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm a failure, but not a traitor. I spent 14 years protecting this country, watching our enemies, keeping Americans safe. I did my job perfectly. My only crime was believing that knowledge had value beyond a government salary." He described the weight of debt, the humiliation of poverty while holding cosmic secrets. He talked about watching his children's disappointment when vacations were canceled, birthdays scaled back, dreams deferred. He spoke of the strange democracy of a McDonald's parking lot, where millionaires and minimum wage workers ate the same food, where no one knew he carried national secrets in his mind. "I never wanted to hurt America," he said, looking directly at the jury. "I wanted America to pay me what my knowledge was worth. Every defense contractor gets rich selling missiles. Every consultant makes millions advising on systems they don't understand. I knew more than all of them. I protected more than all of them. And I couldn't afford my son's braces." The prosecution's cross-examination was brutal. They showed photos of American soldiers in Iraq asking if Reagan considered their lives when stealing satellite intelligence. They displayed images of intelligence officers killed in hostile territory, asking if blown surveillance might have saved them. They presented economic analysis showing Reagan could have declared bankruptcy, downsized his life, found legal solutions to his debt. "You had choices," Prosecutor Hoffman pressed. "Legal choices, honorable choices. Instead, you chose treason." "I chose survival," Reagan replied. "You chose $13 million. I chose to value myself at more than $60,000 a year." The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Judge Gerald Bruce Lee, before passing sentence, made an unusual statement. "Mr. Reagan, you are perhaps the saddest criminal I've encountered in 30 years, not because of your circumstances, but because of your choices. You held knowledge that protected millions and tried to sell it for personal gain. You confused your worth with your clearance level, your value with your access to secrets. In seeking to prove your importance, you proved only your weakness. Life without parole. No possibility of redemption." Reagan stood as the sentence was read, his family watching from the gallery. His daughter covered her face. His son walked out. His wife sat frozen, staring at a stranger wearing her husband's face. The aftermath revealed the true scope of near catastrophe. Damage assessments concluded that if Reagan's intelligence had reached hostile nations, America would have needed to replace its entire satellite constellation, a cost exceeding $50 billion. Hundreds of intelligence operations would have required termination. Human sources would have faced execution. The advantage America held in space-based reconnaissance would have evaporated overnight, but nothing had reached enemy hands. Every dead drop was recovered, every letter intercepted, every secret contained. Brian Regan had committed perfect treason that failed perfectly, caught in a trap he never saw because he was looking at the stars instead of the shadows. Today, Reagan serves his life sentence at ADX Florence, the Supermax prison in Colorado. 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, 1 hour in a cage for exercise. He's allowed no contact with other prisoners, his mail heavily censored, his existence reduced to concrete and silence. The man who once watched the world from space now sees only a sliver of sky through a 4-inch window. In 2010, he recorded a training video for CIA officers, his appearance shocking, aged beyond his years, gray and gaunt, but his message clear. Secrets aren't power, they're responsibility. I forgot that. I thought knowing things others didn't made me special, valuable, irreplaceable, but secrets are just information hidden in darkness. They're not wisdom. They're not worth. They're certainly not worth your soul. The McDonald's parking lots where he left his packages have been repaved, renovated, rebuilt. Families still gather there. Children still play. Ordinary life continues in the spaces where American intelligence nearly hemorrhaged to death. It's a peculiarly American ending, the most damaging spy in our history undone by fast food surveillance, cosmic secrets recovered from beneath Happy Meal debris. Brian Patrick Regan remains the only American serving life for peacetime espionage without successfully transferring any information. He is, in the end, exactly what he never wanted to be. Forgotten, irrelevant, a cautionary tale filed away in classified archives, his name a footnote in the history he once thought he could sell.